Welcome to the Developing Your Football World podcast. My guest today is international futsal coach Sergio Gargelli. Sergio has worked around the world and is currently the Finland men's head coach. He has authored a book called The Futsal Way, which helps coaches transfer futsal concepts to football. Joining me to extract as much useful info as possible is my friend and colleague Sean Dye.
All right, good morning, guys. Thank you very, very much for joining us, and thank you guys who are listening for tuning in. First, let me introduce my co-host for today, Sean Dye. Sean, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Oh, really well, thank you. Always better for seeing your face. Now, we are very, very lucky today because we are talking to a successful international futsal coach who's been there and done it in several different countries. Sergio, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on and speaking to us. How are you today?
I'm good, and thank you so much for your invitation. It's really a pleasure to share ideas with coaches that have desire to improve, and the only way to improve is exchanging ideas from my point of view.
Yeah, I think this exchange is maybe a bit one-sided. I mean, to us, you're kind of like futsal royalty. You're in the positions that we want to get to. So we're going to try and extract as much from you as we can to benefit ourselves, and hopefully a lot of the other listeners can gain from that too.
Yeah. My pleasure. So I'm here to answer your question and to tell a little bit about my experience and how futsal and football can combine themselves.
So you talk in your bio about you are a football and futsal coach, and just want to know what's your journey? How did you get started into futsal?
Well, in futsal in Italy, when I started to play football, was not popular at all. Not popular. I think to me was a non-sport. So I started to play football at 5 years old. I was quite a good midfielder. I had the possibility to go professional, select a professional. Then I injured very young, and I lost a little bit the passion, not in the sport, but let's say in my dream. Even if I always dreamt to be a coach. So I finished my studies, started my career in a job, and then I decided to go back. And we were a group of friends, very good football players. So in Italy, there are several futsal federations, not only the one related to the football association, and there are quite high-level tournaments. So we decided to take part to this league, and we got a great success. We became Italian champion, not of the official futsal league, but another league. And at that time, I am from Florence. The neighbor city is Prato, is just 15 minutes far from Florence. There was a very good team, Prato. And I went to see one match, and I fell in love with this sport because I saw more tactical sport, faster, more goals, and I was really in touch of this. So I was already started to coach kids. I started to be more passionate of futsal, and then I entered in Prato youth teams, and then I started my career, and I had the possibility to see working one of the best coaches in the world, that is Jesus Velasco, the actual coach of Barcelona. And then from there, I started to be in touch. But in Italy, we say the first love is never forgotten. So it's not that I abandoned football, but little by little that my knowledge of futsal improved, I started to watch football with different eyes. And especially my question is how I could solve from a futsal side some problems that there are in football. And to me, there are many that there is some situation where futsal can really be helpful. And from there, we had a really great opportunity when I was working for the Japan Football Association. I was as assistant coach in the national team, and I was coaching a club. And they asked to us, to the staff of national team of futsal, because the football association saw the benefit of futsal. They start to tell us to create a plan to involve professional football clubs in futsal. And this for us was like a challenge to what always we had in mind, that futsal could be the perfect tool in youth to develop some aspect of the football players, because we got much more in details in futsal. And then from there we started the process, and then during the COVID I had the time to write this book. That is some ideas that many years I had in my brain, and I developed it in trainings, and then I wanted to try to collect together and put in a book, not only for the youth, but also especially for the high level competition, because another of my firm point that I have in my mind is that in the football professional staff, there are many roles. Like you have the assistant coach, the coach of for set pieces, the goalkeeper coach, the nutritionist, the different physical coaches. To me, a good help could be given also by a futsal coach to solve many situations of the game.
It's interesting you say that, because of Leeds United, their use of Mike Scubala, and of course it's a professional club. We don't know, things went on there, and Leeds are a bit of a mess at the moment. But I do think there is some benefit in that approach. So if a professional club, let's take, well, maybe not Man City because they won everything this year, but we'll go for Liverpool, a bit further down the table, not as successful currently. In what way do you think a futsal coach being on the staff of Liverpool would help the team improve?
To me, in many situations. Let's say, first of all, what I saw in football, for me, one of the main problems is the lack of mobility. And you see that in one of the, to me, of the biggest changes that there has been in football in the last 20 years is the fact that now the build-up process every time start from the goalkeeper. We don't kick the ball long, because as Guardiola thought, if you kick the ball long, the ball go back quickly, immediately in the point where it came from. So the fact that there is the build-up, now in the pressing, the majority of teams start to go to pressing in numerical equality. This numerical equality means that the attackers need to move to create space. One of the concepts that in futsal we have, the rotation, the switching position, is from the fact that there is no space and we need to create space. I saw in football, especially some teams, passing the ball back to the goalkeeper, all the players remain static in position, and the goalkeeper need to kick the ball because there are few options. So to me, this is one of the main things that help the possession, and where futsal can be a complement. The other one is the combinations. To me, the combinations between 2, 3, and 4 players, especially in the zone of finishing, how to exploit the short side of penalty area, the long side of penalty area, the space up border of penalty area, the inside of penalty area, can be, there can be some concept that can be really useful to football, because it's where there are more density of players, there are less space, defender nearer, few time for thinking and executing, is where you really need this creativity that to me is really important in the last 30 meters.
You wrote something in the book which was fluidity and rotations happen in futsal, not in football. Yeah, football's quite static, and like you said, playing out from the back, you see teams will stand in 4 or 5 at the back and not really change their shape. They just try and work down a different angle. And you also said football is played with the feet and futsal with the brain. And I think there's a lot of risk taking in there, because football is less high scoring but a longer game. So one goal could kill it, whereas in futsal, at least you've got a bit more higher scoring. So I think it might affect the risk in some way. So realistically, we're looking at Manchester City in the attacking third. I often hear people say things like football and futsal, there's not that much transfer But when you watch those best teams, particularly in that attacking third, when the defense is, and they've got 7, 8 players behind the ball, it's really difficult to unlock them. It seems like Man City and the Pep Guardiola Barcelona, they're in that attacking third, they don't play with positions. They go where the ball needs them to go. They rotate, they interchange, they have combinations. And I think it's very hard to get some football coaches to see that. Have you had any success with using futsal to convert football coaches or football players to understand some of the rotations, some of the movements that need to be made to unlock difficult defenses?
To me, there are players. There are players that are able, and there are coaches that see this. To me, as I told you, is a matter of creating spaces, read the free spaces, enter in the free spaces at the right time, and be effective in a space that in a positional play usually is not their spaces. So to me, football is going towards this direction. I had a nice discussion with a FIFA instructor that is here in Finland. Actually, he's an English guy, he's Eddie Muneli. He's very open-minded, and we had several discussions. He agreed with me with many points that football is going in towards this direction. Less positional and more reading, perceiving the spaces, entering the spaces. I can tell you that passing, to me, the step from futsal to football is easy in terms of game understanding, because you pass from a very difficult environment where you have defender very near, few time for thinking, few time for executing, so the technical gesture must be extremely effective. From a small goal to a bigger goal, less pressure on the ball. The only thing that you need to have in the modern football is to have the physical ability to play 50, 60 matches in a year at high level. So, but from a tactical point of view, from decision-making point of view, from technical point of view, I think you go from a very difficult environment to an easier one. To me, the opposite process from football to futsal is really difficult, because you have time for thinking and executing become really, really, really few. The technical gesture must be really, really effective. So it's really difficult from a player from football go to futsal. This is, to me, almost not impossible passage, but required time. This is one of the problems that, for example, we have here in Finland. In Finland, futsal in the youth is really very few competition, like in many countries where futsal is not developed, the youth competitions are not developed. So the individual technical tactical skills are not developed at very, very high level. So when you don't know very well the grammar, when you don't know many words, when you don't know very well the alphabet, and then they ask you to write a book or a poetry or whatsoever, is not so easy. So the process. So to me, futsal really give good fundamental for the players. And another things that we haven't mentioned before is the duel. Duel become every time more important in the sport. And futsal is a situation where or you hunt or you are hunted. There is not a middle way where we respect each other, we are all friends, I don't disturb you, you don't disturb me. No, in futsal there are two ways. Or I go to engage you if I have the ball, or if I don't come to engage you, you come to press me. So there are not another situation. So, and for the DNA of the sport, that we have limited fouls.
That's really important.
From very youth competition, we start already two things. First, we have to be good to defense without foul. So we pay a lot of attention in details about body position, position of the feet, position of the shoulder, technique of running, technique of breaking, transform vertical running in horizontal, use of the hands to disturb the opponent, when to tackle, when to keep the mirror, the dominant foot of the attacker related to position, all this kind of stuff. We pay a lot of attention to this because we cannot make fouls. And the other things from kids, the kids start already to select the fouls when the fouls is necessary. So the tactical fouls is something that futsal players start from very early age.
Yeah, there's a lot of technical detail there that I think is neglected in football. And I've got some really good examples from the book here I'd like to ask you about it. Sean, so you're making a few notes. You got any questions on this so far?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about the fouls. Obviously, we're massive on the fouls in futsal. It makes the game a lot quicker. It keeps it clean. It makes the quality of ball roll time a high standard, in my opinion. But from your experience in like a football environment specifically, if we added that same limit of fouls, I was just reading here that the average amount of fouls in a Premier League game for the top 5 was about 20 to 29 per match. That's a lot of time wasting, as we all know. We all appreciate that time wasting is a big thing, and especially in the Premier League. What sort of impact do you think that would make on the players, first of all, trying to maintain their fitness across, say, like a 50 to 60 match season? And what do you think it'd do to set pieces?
Could be. I never thought in this matter to make a limitations of fouls in football. It could be something interesting. To me, what I notice now in football is that, especially for example, the Premier League, I think is the best in this matter. But for example, in Italy or Spain, the minimum touch is sanctioned. In futsal, for example, they allow too much more the body contacts. I saw this. But I think it could be a nice idea, because if we limit the numbers of fouls, we need really to teach the defenders how to defend in the duels without fouls. So the details must be really, really good, because otherwise you are, for example, in futsal, we know that the fouls in pressing is something stupid. The coach telling me that, hey, we cannot make fouls in pressing. The fouls must be done when there is a dangerous counter-attack. Otherwise, no fouls. So I believe that it could be something interesting, and then can change the course of the game. It can change the course of the game. And about set pieces, you mean the importance of set pieces in a game?
Yeah, so if there's a foul count, there's obviously going to be less set pieces. Do you think coaches would then end up working on them less, or do you think it makes them a more important and more refined product?
Well, I still believe that in set pieces, there are football is still really in delay compared to futsal, because in futsal, every set piece is from 12 meters towards opponent goal. So every time there is a kick in or a corner, is really a situation of goal. You must really threat the opponent. So in football, I see that this is not developed too much yet. This, I think, also because lately the number of matches is increasing too much. And for example, what I saw in the last World Cup, to me, the last World Cup, tactically and in terms of new things, I didn't see anything special. So all the teams try to defend good first, and then see what they can create, if they can create something in attack, because they prepare the World Cup in 1 week. So, and this is really difficult to have time to focus on all the aspects of the games in details, because set pieces is repetitions. I remember when Liverpool, I don't know if they still have this Danish coach that was specialist of throw-in, and they had they introduced a lot of things that for us in futsal was quite common. A switching position, a block behind, a continuation after a block was quite simple things. Like I remember when Sarri was the coach of Empoli, I think they scored 7 or 8 goals in one season in the throw-in in the zone of the short side of penalty area, because they created this switch of position with back block or front block, and they always create a chance of goal. But when Sarri was in Empoli, he has one match every week. And then if you play in a team that play Europe League or Champions League, you have one match every 2-3 days, and this is really complicated. In terms, I don't think there will be less involvement of coaches in the set pieces, because set pieces will remain still a very important tool. A very important tool for solving the game. And then it would be good to think which kind of set pieces we should punish. For example, let's say in football, we put a limitation of 10 fouls per half, every half. So the 11 foul, how will be punished? With the goal, with driving the ball like it was introduced some years ago against the goalkeeper, or a free kick without ball, a free kick without wall, a free kick with wall. This would be nice to introduce something that could be challenging, and where the coaches have to develop maybe something new, or something where they can show some tactical news, I think.
If it were down to me, I would have it as a free kick from inside the D of the penalty area with no ball. So an attacker gets to choose somewhere about 18 to 20 yards away, whatever angle they want inside the D. And yeah, that'll be it for me, I think. Yeah, similar to futsal with the 10-meter penalty, but I like the idea of introducing a foul limit in football, because I hate watching a game when there's an attack going on and it just gets undone by a foul, and then everyone argues with the referee, and in that time you've lost 3 minutes. Now, as someone who pays to watch games on TV and pays to watch games in the stadium, I feel like I'm getting shortchanged. I'm not getting enough football for my pound. And there's so many times I've gone to a match, it finished 1-0. There's been 2 attacks all game. It's just been lots of fouls, people booting the ball out of play, passing back to the goalkeeper 100 times. I paid £60 to watch millionaires go for a walk. I came here to watch football, and I saw this, and I think there's a lot of ideas from futsal that we could take in some way to try and enhance football as a product. You got something to say? I'm not sure, have you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously this is a podcast for coaching. As a coach, I feel like I've coached a lot more since going to futsal than I have in football, because like you say, there's all that arguing with the ref, there's always some sort of falling out, there's always time wasting. Whereas with futsal, as soon as you get on that court, it's right, guys, we're doing this, crack on with that whilst you're on the court. I'm going to speak to my subs because I know they're not going to waste time shouting at the ref, because they don't want to lose that time.
Now, you're right, and it's something I want to talk about in regards to the actual training of it as well. Obviously, futsal with timeouts, with rolling subs, you get to have a lot more input as a coach. When it comes to the design of training, in your book, Sergio, The Futsal Way, you talk a bit about how to structure some sessions, and the idea you're using is essentially like a constraints-led approach. So we're looking at teaching games for understanding, those kind of ideas. And in here, you said the brain looks for solutions we already know. So you're creating practice environments, you're creating sessions, drills, exercises where the players face the problem that they would do in the game. So tell me more about that then. What do you think is important for a futsal training session?
Yeah. To me, we have to start from a premise that, as I told you at the beginning, futsal is too much more tactical than football, from my point of view. So the players have, we need that also the training should be a little bit structured in a different way. So in futsal, for example, the analytical training, like I saw in football, a lot of trains, players pass the ball and move, then they have 1-2, but there is no opponent. In futsal, for us, this has few meaning because it's not connected to a real situation of game. So the training without an opponent is really, and without the connection between technique and tactic, is really done for few minutes in the session. Let's say maximum is 20% of the session, but usually is 10%. So this is the first thing. So futsal for me, if I have to define the sport, is almost no time for thinking and almost no space for play. So what we force is to force the players to anticipate the timeline of the game. So to be in front of the timeline. So we force so much the decision making, and to do this are important two things. First, they must understand the game. So they must understand what is going to happen. And second, if you want to stay in front of the timeline of the game, you cannot just read the game. You have to write the game. So when I listen coaches, the word, my players today didn't read well the game, is something that you are already reacting on something. You are not taking the load of the game. You are reacting on something that happened to you. If you want, you have to write the game. Now you create what you want. You create. So to do this, you really need to have a good understanding. How we do that? In futsal, with every situation, every single technical gesture must relate to a tactical situation. So the training is extremely tactic. And what we do, because the players then decide in a microsecond, and the player in this microsecond go to search something that there is already in the brain. So we use the concept of the cloud. Let me use this concept. We put a lot of tools inside the cloud. So the players have already a lot of solutions for that tactical situation. So this is how in futsal, everything is running. So when I saw him, and I think, because I know, for example, some futsal coaches that have passed to football, and they have brought this. The problem is that they are coaches without a background of high-level football players. So it's difficult that the team that spend millions of euro every year invest in a coach that coming from another world, another complete world. So it's easier to give the responsibility to someone that play high level, and then from this point of view, that's why the majority of football players then they can continue their career. But I don't know if their preparation and their competence is developed. It doesn't mean that if they were very famous football players, they can be also good football coaches. So from this point of view, I think there could be a very, from my point of view, opening of the mind, and the fact of that give reinforce my theory is from the fact that the staff, the technical staff, become every year bigger, because arrive people with a specific knowledge of an argument, and then this specific knowledge brings something to the coach, some extra value. Of course, the head coach have to lead, but I believe that this is where the football is going. This is where football is going, and why the football is the quality of football is improving a lot. So in terms of going back to in terms of training session, so to me, as I told you, the key is that the game lead. So the game is the key where we have to watch. From game, we have to structure our training session. Always bring in 3 points. The first one is how we want to play. The second one, who we have to play against. And the third one, thinking that if we want to write the game, we have to give solutions to our players how to face all the situations that there are in the game. So the players must have the tools to recognize and solve the problems. If they don't have the tools, and to me, because I don't know the system yet to put an earphone to all the players and suggest the solution during the match, I don't know, I am not able to do that. So I must train in a way where the players are autonomous, they have full autonomy to take their own decision inside the game. So I have to trust to them. My job is giving tools during the training. So if the training is too much analytical and is too much separated from what happens in game, I am not sure that I'm going in this direction.
We use a phrase here, are they learning the game or are they learning the drill? So it's really important. It's got to be it's got to be realistic. It's got to look like something. And something you said reminds me of, I'm sure, so many courses over the years. On my master's, I think they said that intelligence is remembering in disguise. So you're painting pictures, you're creating scenarios. So you face an opponent with the players are positioned like this. You create that scenario in practice, and you do it enough times that it then starts to become embedded in their brains. Which comes into this, where you talk in the book about football intelligence. And this is another example of the level of detail that you use. And you just bear with me a second as I read this out.
Yeah.
You talk about players in three terms with that intelligence. An adjusting player who understands what is happening only after events have occurred. So adjusting player. And then reacting player who reacts to situations as they are happening. And then you've got the anticipating player who can see events before they happen and they implement situations or solutions before they occur. And then I use the great phrase here, make the future happen. And I think that's definitely something that we see up close in the NFS is the players that stand out. Every team's got a couple of players who are able to make a difference because they're a few steps ahead of those around them. So I think a lot of players are reacting. They go where the ball tells them, they go where the game tells them. And then you've got some special players who, how did they see that? And they end up just getting themselves that time, that space, or playing that pass that the rest of us couldn't see. So keeping practice realistic, how can we get more players into that anticipating player category where they can make the future happen?
I thought to me, as everything in life can be implemented and can be trained. I believe that there are very few players in football, also in high-level football, that really has this gift from God, and they don't need to do anything. So to me, the majority of players is because they had the path, they had they started to understand. For example, what we talked before about writing the game. To me, one way to be one step in front of timeline of the game is imagine the situation, and I can show you some videos of Iniesta or some other players, that they can condition the defense. They obligate the defense, for example, with their body position, with their driving the ball. They condition the defense. They read the signal of that situation to go in a direction, and suddenly they change the angle of the ankle and make a pass that is in opposition to where they have the body position. In this situation, they create the future because they obligate the defense to do a movement, and they do this consciously. They obligate the defense to go in a direction, and then they pass completely to another. And in this way, they said, oh, they are doing this kind of thing because they know what they are creating. They know what they are doing with their movement. So this is a way for me, and there are many gestures that sometimes they could be without purpose. For example, if you remember Ronaldinho, the no-looking pass that if you ask to the majority of people, the technical meaning of the technical targets of the no looking pass, they said, it's just because he want to receive a club. And this is not that. It's not that. He want to condition the defense. He want to condition the defense because he put the face in a place and then he pass in the other. So he gained a time of play, a gain advantage for the next, to unfold the next play. So when you see these details and watching players like Iniesta, Ronaldinho, and big players, what they do, and this is something that is not taught. They develop themselves, conditioning the game. What we talked about futsal before. In futsal, we have some rules, and these rules condition. We have talked before about the fouls. This rule conditions the development of players. What I mean, if you consider that in futsal we have limitation of the back pass to the goalkeeper, what consequence in this for the players? For me, there's a lot of technical, tactical consequence. First, the body orientation must be good because you cannot pass back to the goalkeeper if your body orientation is not correct. One pass and ball lost. Second, ball protection. You cannot kick the ball immediately. You must be able to play under pressure, keep the ball under pressure, maybe change direction and go to play to the weak side. Third point, movement without ball. The teammate must know that you receive and you don't have the back pass to the goalkeeper. You must move to create space. 4 points, different concept of risk. Because if you don't have the back pass to goalkeeper, you cannot every time you have a defender at 2 meters kick the ball far. Otherwise, there is no passes, there is no development of game. So the level of risk that we develop to play under pressure is different than every time for many coaches, pass the ball back to the goalkeeper, and this is the tactical solution of not teaching the players how to protect the ball, how to correct the body orientation, how to play under pressure, and what we talked before. So these rules that we have some in futsal, for example, when I play with kids, because the paradox in futsal is that there is limitation of use of goalkeeper, but the goalkeeper is more involved than in football. So why this? I like, for example, when I train football kids and I want the goalkeeper participate, I tell to the goalkeeper to use the old futsal rules that you can back pass to the goalkeeper, but the goalkeeper cannot throw the ball, cannot kick the ball in the opposite half court. So when they play 5v5, this rule, okay, you can use the goalkeeper how many times you want, so the goalkeeper learn to be involved in the position, like to play like a playmaker at the back, but he cannot pass the ball long. So if you want to play, you need to switch position. How? At beginning, just move. And then you start to ask questions to players. Stop, like in a photo, and tell, what happened? Why you lost the ball? What happened instead of there, you make this other movement? You try, if they don't see the solution, you try to guide to a solution without revealing the solution. That's to me the point where you make players understanding, and little by little, and then you see sometimes things happen that you start to see, this player put his creativity. They find new solutions to exit from that situation. So to me, is this condition the game in a way to obligate the players to do something. And to me, it's possible because I have some videos. If you want, I show you, because we started to talking about this, and I would like to show you one video about football that, to my point of view, is something that that is really, there are rotation in football, really rotation that are really rotation like in futsal. And this, to me, if I have to think about football, I would like to see this kind of football. Can I share just a minute my screen?
Well, of course, yeah, and I'll do my best to describe it for anyone that's only listening in and not watching.
Okay. Uh, I cannot share because it's not habilitated. In any case, if you want, there is a movement of, it was Hamburg team in Bundesliga. You can, if you in the blog, you cannot. I can send you a link where to watch this.
Yeah,
And
when I post this everywhere, I'll add the video in the comments so people can see what you mean.
It's very nice how the players switch position in the build-up. It looked like real futsal and how they disrupt the defense. And to me, this is something because the players know when to move long, when to move short, when to stop. And these are things that are related to tactic. And the last point in that is the scanning of the environment. If you think the good player, Iniesta, Busquets, when they receive the ball, usually are between 3 or 4 defenders. And they have usually 2 defenders inside the visual field and 2 defenders outside the visual field. So it's really important to unfold the next play. So to play a one touch at the back or to turn and play forward or to make a directional control and pass the opponent with first touch, that they can perceive and scan the environment of the defender outside the visual field. So this movement of neck that they have to do to scan the environment during the trip of the ball, they help them to unfold the next play. So these are all elements that to me contribute to create the intelligent players, the players that stay in front of timeline of the game.
I've got an example I want to share real quick, and Sean will come to you because I'm sure I'm about to waffle here. But when you mentioned Ronaldinho, it took me back to 2015 when he was playing in Mexico. We've got very, very vivid memory of this. So we talk here a lot about disguise and deceive. Can you hide what you're about to do, or can you make the defender think you're going to go right and go left? So give them these false signals. You talk a lot in the book as well about body orientation, scanning, feints, first touch. Of course, there's great examples of Thiago Alcantara looking the wrong way and taking 2 defenders just with his body shape. So Ronaldinho was playing for Querétaro, who were an average team in Mexico, and he's come to the Azteca to play against Club America. And America were awful that day. They're 2-0 down, and Ronaldinho's on the bench. Of course, the stadium's full of America fans that have come to see Ronaldinho play for the opposition. And about 83 minutes he comes on. Oh, finally, here we go. And he scores 2 goals in that last 7 minutes. But this one goal in particular is exactly what you were talking about here. He's 1v1 with a defender on the edge of the box. And the way that Ronaldinho is dribbling with the ball, he's doing the crabbing technique in futsal, where he's trying to get the defender to open his stride to block a shot. So he's sending in these signals, getting the defender to commit, and he wants the defender to open his legs. And then from about 18, 20 yards, he passes the ball between the defender's legs into the bottom corner of the goal. And the keeper is stood completely still because he didn't see it coming. There was nothing about Ronaldinho that said, I'm going to shoot him. And then everything about him said he was going to hit the ball really hard in the far corner to the defender. So that's why the defender sticks out a leg to try and block it. And it was just superb. So I will find that example and put it in the comments because it was just the best example of that disguise and deceive. So I would also like to take that little trip down memory lane and share that video with people. So Sean, over to you.
Yeah.
It's exactly that.
So listening to both of you really there. Obviously, we're trying to cultivate creativity. And you've got the example of Ronaldinho there, obviously played a lot of futsal back in the day. But then we've got the more professional examples of yourself in the futsal environment. So I actually read a really good book by João Almeida earlier on in the year about coach decision-making and preparation and planning. And for me, what I really picked up from your examples and also from reading the book is the importance of the game model compared to football. I feel like in football it's easier to blag away from what your game model is compared to futsal because there's so much more what's the word? It's concentrated. You're in a small 40-minute game and there's constantly action after action. And like you say earlier with the hunted versus hunter sort of comparison, you're either on one end and you've got to react to it quickly, you've got to predict it quickly. So my question for you is, one, when you're analyzing your teams and you're trying to plan how to improve, do you deliver a session based purely on your analysis, or do you kind of like try and stay true to your game model? And my second question is, how long has it really taken you to develop a game model that can put you into that professional sort of phase of your career?
Well, these are really great questions. This is when the coaches need to think to an answer, they start to say, this is really a good question. So they gain time for thinking to the answer. And first of all, I believe I learned this from a volleyball coach that we had in Italy, that the gold generation of volleyball, that he changed everything, and is Julio Velasco, that to me is the coach of the coaches. If you listen talking him, is really a genius. And he always tell that every player is different from another. And you have to detect what can create immediate improvement in a player. Because he always told one thing: if a player improve in one thing, so focus all the attention in one thing, in futsal, the team improve in 5 things. And a team that improve in 5 things is no more the same thing. It's another team. So to me, it's important not tell the players to have to improve in this, because otherwise they put all the energy in many things. They improve, but very, very few in all the things, and they almost remain the same. So to me, it's better detect the error. So I am used to do individual trainings for positions. And to me, this is important to make the players at beginning see that change is possible. They notice the concept of self-efficacy. They saw themselves quickly improve, they gain confidence, and this established then a virtual circus where we can move. So I do once a week individual training, and every player has to develop some skills. And we create situations where are not analytical training, where this training can be developed in real situational games, frame games. About the game model, when I started to be coach, I was, let's say, much more integralist. Allow me this word. I thought that independently to the players that I have to play in a certain way. Now, with the experience, I change a little bit more and try to adapt my way of playing to the features of the players that I have. So to put in the conditions the best players to express what they can express in the field. And of course, I have some points that are unnegotiable. For example, I like to have the load of the game, to keep the load of the game. I don't like when the opponent has the ball. I don't feel comfortable when the opponent has the ball, because my concept is if the opponent do everything good, I receive a goal. So I cannot wait the mistake. So to me, the concept I tell to players, you have to be protagonist in defense and attack. Protagonist means you have to put pressure on the ball, recover the ball as soon as you can, and then be confident with the ball. One of my biggest problems that I had in my career is how to make possession with players that technically and tactically are not the best or are poor. And I studied different sports in that. I analyze hockey. What do a team in hockey when you want to keep the possession? I analyze the former Barcelona of Guardiola, which were the main points to keep the possession. Of course, I analyze futsal and I analyze basketball. These to me were the four sports where I try to analyze and see which are, there are common points. And one of the points to me is first, the pass back. And when you pass back, approach the ball, go towards the ball to give options, understanding very well the concept when the ball is pressed and when it's not pressed, because when the ball is pressed, the player with the ball has to pay attention to not to losing the ball, so we have to give support to the pass. And sometimes for me, the concept that we told before about the back pass, one back pass give the option then to go forward, because we exit from a dangerous situation, we orientate well the body, and then we play vertical. And the third point is try to reduce the number of defenders. So to have advantage in a zone or create an isolation in a zone. So if I have a player good in 1v1, I have to try to isolate him. So to remove from him the possibility of help in defense. So he can play the 1v1 with the maximum possible space. These to me are concepts where I am very clear in my team, let's say, concept of play. And to me, I don't like too much playing game model, but work for concept, for game concept, because play as a system require that you have, like I call, pre-built movement. So the players play but like a robot. So, and there are coaches that in futsal, they can predict you 20 passes. 20 passes, how in 20 passes, if you make 20 passes correctly, how will be the answer of the defense in 20 passes? I prefer to give tools to players to interpret the game, to give concept of game, situation, and they have to put their own ingredients to create the good recipe. This is how I like to train. Not as a system, but as a concept. It's a little bit more longer the process, but in terms of then giving the players this autonomy and stay, as we said, in front of timeline of the game, to me is something that has given me more results.
So we're in the final stretch here. If I can keep you for another 5 to 10 minutes, I just want to talk very briefly about global futsal, some of your opinions on what countries can do to develop the game. Because correct me if I'm wrong, you've worked in 7 different countries. Oh, Italy, Vietnam, Qatar, Japan, China, Finland. Any more?
Norway.
Norway.
I worked in Norway.
Norway. So before, when we were chatting, before we press record, you said that a lot of countries got the same kind of problems regarding ignorance of futsal. So just yesterday, I received an email from a player asking if they can come play indoor football with us. It's not indoor football, it's futsal. So when you meet people, when you tell them, what do you do? Oh, I'm a futsal coach. Do you still get the reaction of, oh, is that an indoor football game? There's still a lot of ignorance around it, isn't it? So what kind of misconception?
I tell you a funny story that, first of all, I don't know how much every federation in percentage of the budget of the federation dedicate to futsal. I think in Finland is 1.5% of the budget of the federation. In Japan, I remember when won 2 consecutive Asian Cup, it passed from 4% to 4.5% and was considered a big step. So this is how every federation dedicate time to futsal. So we have to be smart, like pirates, to do a lot with few resources. So that's why in futsal we developed this alternative way of thinking. I tell you this anecdote about Vietnam. When I arrived, in the country, maybe I go to a restaurant, there were foreigners asking me, also Vietnamese, what's your job? I am coach of futsal national team. What is this sport? It's kind of football, they play indoor like this. And they tell me, Vietnam as a national team of this sport? Yes, as a national team. And to me, the big success, one of the biggest, is introduce the futsal culture in the country. And futsal became in 4 years the most practiced sport from center to south of Vietnam. And I remember the first match that we play, because I said to develop futsal in the country, we need to play international friendly matches. So bring like 4 nation tournaments and try to play. I remember the first tournament we played, I think there were in the stadium maybe 200-300 people. The tickets was free. And if you consider the friends, the parents of the players and whatsoever, maybe there were some people that live next to the stadium that came to see the match. And I was really disappointed with that, because I said, how is possible? We are still a national team. Whatever is the sport, they should be proud of the country. And in 4 years, when we had the last tournament and we beat Brazil, there were almost 5,000 people paying the ticket. And this to me is really one of the biggest success. So we change completely the mentality. We bring the way of working of futsal inside the Football Federation. How we structure the academy became the same structure of football. And they play, I think 3 years ago, they play the final of Asian Cup of under 23 Vietnam. So it really, or under 19, I don't remember, one of this big tournament in football. So a really big success in the country, because we really brought this new mentality, the new way of working. So to me, that is the idea. I don't think that futsal can compete with football, because we are not on the same level in every federation. To me, the big step is understand that these two sports are like two brothers, that for a period, they should have a common path that to me is at least until 14 years old. And Neymar is the classic example. And then they specialize. But this specialization brings sometimes, again, because of the nature of football is changed, and the usable space due to the offside rule, the high pressure after lost the ball, the usable space is became smaller and smaller. There are concepts of futsal that you can bring again and again in football. Consider how also the technique of goalkeeper is changing in the last 15 years. The use of the cross, the use of the split, these come from futsal. So in finishing, 1 versus goalkeeper, the football players must think what the futsal player do if the goalkeeper use the same technique.
So that's a really good point on transfer as well, from football to futsal. I like to show people the example of Emiliano Martinez making a save in the World Cup against France. That was a World Cup winning save, and it was a futsal technique. So there's so much benefit. Go on, Sean.
Yeah, I was just going to touch back on what you said about like the backing from the FAs and stuff. Forgive me if I'm wrong, if it's not as good as it sounds as you made it out to be. But I think the biggest problem we have in England at the moment is the lack of support from our FA. And it's pretty much an entire community run by the community. There's very little support in actually developing the sport over here and integrating it in a way that's productive for both sports. It seems more so that we've got an obsession that futsal is made to support football, rather than actually having a separate futsal pathway that goes on to excel in accompaniment to football. I kind of just wanted to know, how long has it really taken to get like support for the national team and to create a buzz, and like what were the steps taken? Were there any obstacles in the way of that as well? Because I think it's something that in England we definitely are in desperate need of.
Well, this is a political answer. From my point of view, you cannot make the war to football because you will lose. So you have to make the opposite process. You have to understand football that need futsal. So if you make football understand that football needs futsal as a tool to improve their quality, then they start to invest. Then the process will be the opposite. If you start to approach it, we don't have space, we don't have our players path, we don't have resources. For me, is a word that is lost at beginning because they don't care about us. They don't care because they think we are useless. So we need to change the point. And to me, to change the point, you need to change through clubs. So a target is make what we have done in Japan, and I understood this in Japan because at beginning I thought this was not a good way. I was like you, making the like Don Quixote fighting and don't bring anything. The Japan Federation changed the point. So if the professional football players, the professional football teams understand that futsal is very good to improve their players, to make their players better, to improve their quality of the game, they start to invest in futsal. They start to, the kids play the double activity. They start to have futsal coaches in their staff. And then this is something that put everything in motion, because then who will be a futsal player then? The same that futsal player in Brazil. The players that are no good to become professional football players, they have already a good base of futsal. They have already a really good base of futsal because you have worked on individual technical, tactical skills. In Italy, the project Futsal in Soccer that I helped the federation was this. We went to professional football clubs and start to tell, hey, this is futsal, making a meeting with technical director and coaches, telling this is futsal, this is the parallel, what futsal can bring to football, and this is how we train in the field. Are you interested? If you're interested, every 2-3 months, we come to make a session, and you in change have to bring in your staff some futsal coaches and take part to futsal youth competitions. And this is the same that we are trying to do now in Finland, the futsal month, where the professional football clubs play in winter in 1 month futsal competitions, real futsal, with futsal rules. But this, I have been to clubs, to professional football clubs, talking with the technical director, all the coaches, sometimes with the first team also, showing what we can give. And when you show something, as we talk, is ignorance, but they are not stupid. So when you show some ignorance in terms that they don't know, when you show something and they saw the benefit, then they are not stupid. They tell, hey, come here, come to teach to me this, because this is something useful. And this is what Brazil has done. Brazil has done. And one of the questions at the beginning was, why in Brazil, Argentina, Portugal, and Spain, they are the bigger exporter of players of the world? Of course, there is something related also to the social political situation, but it's also the 4 countries where the futsal youth competitions are more developed. And the experiment that Manchester United did, Football 5 or Futsal, Football 8, where they noticed 500% more of goal, 200% more of 1v1. These numbers, the fact that you constrain the players to a certain, react to certain environment, they will develop themselves. So this is to me the key. And this is to me the way, if we think to make the world to football, to my point of view, we can't. Or we separate our federation, so we create an independent federation like basketball, volleyball, etc., like futsal had in the beginning. And futsal, when this was in the beginning, they had all the youth competitions in all the South American countries at least. But if we remain under the Football Federation, to me, the only way is make them understand that they need us. And can come in, going to clubs and having some clubs like Birmingham, as you said before, that they can do that. I can tell you last thing, Granada in Spain. I don't know if you know Granada Football Club, that was in second division, now it's promoted again. I have a company that is called Futsal Solution, and with other coaches that the same idea, we started to develop this method inside football clubs. And Granada liked a lot this method, so we started to make formation with them. But at one moment they asked first to make them fully understand this. With under 13 and under 11 has been done a football match between Granada players and Albolote. Albolote is a club, futsal club in Granada area. Granada has the best team, has the best players, selected players, they train more, and we play a futsal game, and they had 2 big lost. But fundamentally, they noticed how the players of Albolote hide the intention, dominate the use of the feint, the body orientation, the movement without ball, how they deceive the opponent, how they go in 1v1. So all these individual skills. So what we were transferring to them, they said, hey, how is possible that our selected kids, that they train more, they go to play against non-selected kids that are physically also worse, and they lose so heavily? What's happening? We are talking now, create a common document in order to make understand which are the futsal points, the futsal elements that are very recurrent in football, or even if they are not recurrent, they have a big impact on the game. Happen 2 times per game, but when they happen are really, really relevant. So we are creating this document, and they started the same process that have done Manchester United. So delay, postpone the beginning of Football 8 in order to play futsal, and the kids have started to play competition of futsal. And there will be, when professional teams, they started to do that, of course, they condition then all the pyramid, also the lower level of the pyramid, thinking and making change the idea of parents, because in the dream of every kids, if you ask 1,000 kids, maybe you can find 1 or 2 that they tell, my dream is become Ricardinho. Everyone will tell, my dream is become Neymar, Messi, Ronaldo, or a football player, because this is what they see every day. So we have to change this point, make understand football that we are important. And this, guys, is in your hands, because you are coaches, and this is in our hands. If football understand this, then we have opened the door. Then everything has a consequence. Everything has a consequence. When we did this in Italy with futsal in soccer, now there is Juventus that signed Musti as a leader of the project of futsal. That was the coach of national team. Inter, that they are doing this. Milan are doing this. Bologna is doing this with men and women, and they have the first team of futsal playing 3rd division also. So the process is going. So this is what I recommend you for England.
Yeah, you're right. We need to win the hearts and minds of people, show them the benefits of it. Just last weekend, we ran a tournament. We had 4 under-12 teams there, and can we firstly convince the coaches, show the coaches it's worthwhile. Look at how fast they get. Look, your kids are developing, they get lots of touches, it's reduced space. And then convince the parents. Now the parents, the place we played, they had a nice viewing gallery, so we're kept away from the court, so they didn't shout stupid instructions, but they were also able to view from there. And it was full of goals, it was full of skills, and you could see the parents getting really carried away, really enjoying it. And I keep trying to make the point to them, did you see your kid scored 4 goals today, when if he plays football, he wouldn't even get 1 shot? And did you see all the skills? Did you see the risks he was taking? On top of that, didn't get rained on, no mud. So trying to convince them as much as I can. So I think you answered a lot of that. How do we convert people? So my final question for you is, what makes a country successful at futsal. I've been to Spain loads, and you just have to walk down the street and you see every school playground is flat concrete with futsal goals. A lot of hotels even have futsal goals or courts or some kind of small pitch nearby. And I've got to think, well, the kids in Spain still play on the street way more than we do here. A lot of our parks and streets are empty. Whereas, particularly in Barcelona, there's an outdoor culture. On Sundays, most shops and other places are closed. So you have to go outside and spend time with people. And it's nice and warm, you can walk everywhere. And here, football is just so dominant. It's always grass. If you play small-sided, it's 5v5, 6v6, 7v7, and it'll be on grass. There'll be walls. There'll be an overhead height rule. Goalkeeper can't leave the area. And so it's not going down that futsal route. So having looked at countries, having been to lots of different countries like you have, and worked in with first division clubs, worked with national teams, you've been there, you've seen it. What do the better futsal countries have that the rest of us don't have? What are they doing that we're missing out on?
To me, the terms of the field is not so important, as you said. To answer one of the points that you said, to me is important. It's not important if you play futsal on concrete, wood, plastic, or grass. To me, it's important you apply the rules. Then, and the space. For me, this is important. About the grass, okay, start to play. What's the consequences, for example, to train with a futsal ball and a football ball? Because these has consequences for me. Then more touches of the ball stay more on the floor. You have to push more the pass. So you are, because the good pass is the pass that go through defensive lines. It's not just the horizontal pass. This every player can do. No need to. But the pass that go through defensive lines, this is important. And the pass that go through defensive lines have to pass through legs. So the movement, the pass must be tense, must be good. If you start to train with grass, with a futsal ball, the players have to treat the ball differently. They have to push the pass. When you go back to normal ball, you will see that the circulation of the ball is faster. This is something that already conditioned the game. So to answer your question, to me, is simple. It's very simple. Futsal, I think, is more forming environment, create better individual technical tactical skills to players. If I want to make you a good writer, you must know the alphabet, the grammar, and many words. And then you decide to create a newspaper article, a book, a romance, a poetry, because you have all the tools in your bag. If you don't work well in these tools, and you don't have enough tools, and you start specialization and positional play from beginning, instead of teaching to players to read the space, to enter the space, to be effective in the space, then of course you have limitation when you grow up. Maybe you become very good to write romance, but if you have to write a poetry, you don't know even what is a poetry. So what we are trying to do in Finland is working with professional football clubs, because in Finland, the weather is not so good to play outdoor. The population is few. And so one of the things that I told to Federation, we are few people, we cannot risk to lose any talents. So the talents must be monitored, and what is not good to arrive to professional football, we can be recycled in futsal. This is a must. So the thing is, try to work on individual as much as we can, and to meet these macro targets. One is the duels. So give tools for the duels, defense and attack. The second one is speed of the game. So speed of technical gesture, speed of ball circulation, speed of decision making, and creativity. All these make the speed of the play. Then be effective as individual in small space intended. So you should have good technical, tactical skills like directional control, body orientation, first touch, the feint, and be very effective in a small space, a small group of tactics, combine very well 2 players, 3 players, 4 players, have the same tactical intention. And then the last one is the technical gesture, be very effective, have a decent individual skills. So these to me are the 4 points to develop a good futsal player. If you have this in youth, then when arrive the moment that the players, okay, I will choose futsal because I see that my street in football is not, then I will see that I am immediately competitive. And the last thing is about to have immediate result in futsal, you must be extremely, extremely physical competitive. You must be a little bit a bastard, allow me the word, because futsal is really, it became really a fight in the field. So if you don't fight, respecting the rules, of course, but you don't know how to use the body in the duel, how to push, how to unbalance the opponent, is really Portugal that became world champion and European champion in futsal. If you see the game between the 2 of the best team in Europe, that is Benfica Sporting, there are 2 real battles. There are 2 real battles. So this aggressivity, this intensity, this creating a jungle, because if you're creating the jungle, the players have to find solution in the jungle. Then you will develop futsal players.
Very, very good. Thank you very, very much. Before you go, let's just give you a few plugs so people can find you and find this useful information, because you've given us just over an hour's worth of fantastic information, but I know you've got lots more good stuff out there. So the Futsal Way is maximizing the performance of elite football teams through futsal methods. I will put links to that wherever we post the podcast. And I know you've got a lot of good stuff online. You've got your own website. I know if you type your name, Sergio Gargelli, into YouTube, you'll find good stuff on there. I did through the webinars with the Malaysian FA. That was fantastic. And also listened to the one you did with Gary Coney with the modern soccer coach. Okay. That was great too. So there's really, really good content out there. Where else can people find you? What else have you got that we can take to benefit us as coaches?
Thank you so much again for your time, and thank you so much for invitation. It was really a pleasure. I would like to visit you in England if I have time, so we can discuss more in depth, because I saw, guys, your great passion, and to me this is the element number 1 for a coach. The passion, try to evolve himself.
Yeah, I don't think you survive in futsal without a lot of passion. So where else can people find out about you and about futsal? What would you recommend for them?
To me, watch games. The first, watch games. To me, as I told you, everything, if you pay attention in the games, you start to see things. What I develop when I do futsal courses for football, then a lot of football coaches start to see this element in football also, and they start to send me video. Hey, coach, I noticed this parallel. I noticed this, how they hide the 1-2. I noticed this movement. I noticed this, how they use the hands in the duels, and they send me videos. And to me, this is what we have to do as coaches. Watch the game and see what the game demands. And then from there, about futsal, always it's not like before when I started that there were no info. Today is in YouTube, there are a lot of info. So of course I can recommend my book, because it was more difficult for me write a book than be a coach. But there are many books around, and many information that you can find and where you can develop.
Well, make sure to pass on everything about yourself as well, because I know you'll benefit a lot of people. So thank you very, very much for your time. Enjoy Finland, and enjoy your trip to Japan as well.
Thank you so much.
We'll look out for you, and thank you for your time, and thank you for benefiting other people.
Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Sergio for joining Sean and myself. A reminder that the book is called The Futsal Way. I'll be posting links to this and other great content from Sergio on our social media channels. Remember that you can listen to this podcast on YouTube, Facebook, all good podcast apps, and also the BFCN app. If you want to browse jobs, read articles, and listen to interviews with ease, make sure to download the BFCN app. It's been a while since our last interview. I have a few more lined up over the summer. Since our last recording, we have secured a discount on Bazooka goals for our members. BFCN members get 13% off the best mini goals around. If you're in the mood for a career change and want to head overseas, some of the latest jobs include Qatar, Egypt, Hong Kong, Dubai, France, USA, India, Italy, Spain, Cyprus, Latvia, Australia, Belgium, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Cambodia. We'll see you next time.